Hello, my name is Ian Timmis, and I'm going to demonstrate my Android application development final project. I call it IanMAL, Ian being my name, and Mal I'll explain to you in a second. I'm going to go a little bit about the background of my application. I'm going to talk about the app architecture. I'm going to go into detail about some of the activities, which are the screens in an Android app. I'm going to explain how I perform my web service calls and talk about my shared preferences. After all that, I'm going to show a little demo so you can see that it's working. So there's a website called myanimelist.net, and what anime is a Japanese form of animation, so they're different, basically TV shows, and this website is used for people who are fans of the genre and keep track of all the shows they're watching or have seen, and they can give them ratings, etc., etc. So they don't have an unofficial application as far as mobile goes, but they do have an open API for anyone to use. So I decided to use this in my application, as I find that two of the most important things a mobile developer should have, in my opinion, are ability to make web calls and the ability to make nice user interfaces. And what I did with this application is I used the material design, which is the high class, nice looking user interfaces for Android. So my app architecture, I went with this sort of three, I guess, layered approach. The activities being the screen and the user interfaces, mainly calling. They receive like, button clicks and different handlers from the GUI, and show you images and text and stuff. They make calls to the different communication modules, and what the communication modules are the several objects I've built that make these calls to the database. Each one extends the async task, and they are used asynchronously to get information from the database, which then returns and populates these entities and returns the useful information into the activity to be displayed to the user. Going down the other way, I have the shared preferences, which are the user preferences, essentially, for the application. What I do is I save the username and the password and an ID and a remember me boolean, which determines whether the user would like to remain logged in, and those are saved internally in the phone. So here's the main screen. I just made this little logo on, I think it's called logomaker.com. The login screen is designed using a gradient in the background that is done programmatically in the XML file, the layout file, which calls a different layout file which contains XML describing a radial gradient. And these colors, there's three different colors used in this gradient stemming outwards from the center to create this. And in the future, if I decide to create separate themes or just change the colors, I don't have to go into the code per se. I could just do it from the colors.xml file. I have another XML file which contains the text border, which is this white box around the username and the white box around the password. And those are displayed through XML also. As for the functionality of this portion of this activity, you put your username and your password in here and click login. And when you do that, it creates a separate task in the background which verifies your user credentials with the MyAnimeList API. So once the MyAnimeList API returns to you whether you've been logged in or not, it gives you a user ID So essentially, if you go back here to the app architecture, you have your activity, you're clicking login, so that's the button getting handled in the activity. It's making a call to this communication module, which is trying to verify your credentials. It populates a user info entity I created and then returns to you the information that's useful. So you log in, it will display whether you, if it logs in, it'll go to the next screen. If not, it'll show a small toast, which is a Android notification at the bottom that something's gone wrong. It says that it just cannot log in. The response, I have a couple notes down here, and we read these. The response is then converted from the API returns an XML string, and the response is converted into a byte stream and parsed by the XML pull parser, which is a library used to parse XML in Java. So if you click the Remember Me function, it will save your username and password in the user preferences so that upon login in the future, it will just jump to this next screen, the content screen. So in the content screen, as you can see, I have the different anime shows. If you click this button up here in the top right, it will switch between this sort of grid layout to this list layout, these longer tiles. As you can see, has the name underneath the image, which is all pulled from the IanMAL API. There are separate entities which handle the getting the image and getting your entire anime list as a whole. So what happens is it pulls the entire anime list down, populates many entities inside the app, and then it parses through some of the data, picking out the URL to the image, and then a separate async task is used to populate the images. The palette API was used to pull out the main color, the most vibrant color in the image, and display it in the bar with the name underneath the image. And I also created, if you see on the very right, a default image in case something goes wrong. The file name has been changed on the internet, or you lose access to the internet and it cannot load. So you can switch between the views. It displays the images. Once you can open up these images and get more. You can open up these tiles, like you can get more information on each show, or you can click this button up here on the top left to open up the navigation bar, which displays anime, manga, settings, and logout. Manga are the comic books, and the anime are the cartoons. So far right now, the anime, manga, and settings buttons do not do anything. Excuse me. However, the logout does. The logout will log you back out, send you back to the login screen, and will update your user preferences, changing the Boolean value that saves whether you'd like to be remembered or not. Also, I'd like to note that if you're in the content screen, I've disabled the back button that Android natively gives you so that it won't just log you out and bring you back to this login screen. And also, if you log out via the navigation bar, which should be the only way to log out, coming back to the login screen and clicking the back button will not return you to the content screen. So if you have logged out, you cannot get back to the content screen unless you log back in. So as for the detail screen, which would be when you open up the content, a separate color is picked out from the image of the lightest vibrant color, and it puts it into this bottom portion. And to give you the information from the content screen to the detail screen, it packs up the entity information into a parcel or a parcelable object, which essentially is a special way of packing up information and passing it through your activities. You can normally do this without using special parcels, but if you want to handle custom data types, such as my custom entities where my data is stored, you must use a parcel. So and there's also an animation. When you click the tile, it will sort of stretch and move up and transform the screen into the detail screen. So it doesn't look like multiple activities, it looks like one changing activity. So you can see, for now, you can see the status, you can see how many episodes you've watched. These two have both been completed. This one at the very right, it says 209 out of minus, or my rating is minus. The minus or the dash can be used, or shall be used when there's no information, which is what the website does. So I decided to mimic that behavior since that's what that website does. So I kind of talked about this before, but I use sorry, I paused it. I got a phone call. Where was I? So the required permissions for the web service calls are the internet and the access network state, so that the app can make these web service calls to make to the IanMAL API. They created an async task, which is another thread, so that your app is still responsive while it's making these calls in the background. And to make these calls, I use the OKHTTP library. And normally you can just create these different HTTP calls, but with this website you need basic authentication, so I provide a token created from a username and password with the call to authenticate my information on the other end. After that information gets back to me, after the response comes back from the web service call, it's in an XML string. So the XML poll parser goes through the XML, and I can do custom behavior to populate different entities in my application with the information received, with the useful information received from the API. And in the shared preferences, I have the ID, the username, the password, and remember me. The ID can be helpful for when you're doing certain calls to the API. So if we forgot to mention, if we go back to this detail screen, this is contained in a list underneath, a list view, which essentially just populates this small view, which can be populated with any sort of UI element going downwards. So I can add buttons, I could add text, I could add more images, I could add whatever I want, and it will all be contained within this bottom portion, and I can start scrolling upwards to display more if it came up to where there was more information. So now that I've talked a little bit about my application, I'll show you a quick demo of it working, and that'll be it. These images on the side for the username and password are also custom and saved into a special folder. So I have IamTimus is my account, and if I give it a nonsense password, it says it could not log in. However, if I provide it with my correct password, I can log in. See, I cannot go backwards. I can look through the list. This is all getting pulled from the internet. I can open up and animate, and you see the animation. It's a little slow on the emulator, but it animates upwards and stretches out and downwards. And you can see I have the information right here. And it can be clicked, however, they don't do anything, so it's just there to show you. I can switch it to the list view in case you want wider images. I can log back out. This is also contained in a small list, the remember me login username and password. So if I were to rotate the application, it still comes up perfectly. Alright, where's the top? There it is. So I'll log in once again, and I'll display the, I'll demonstrate my remember me feature. So I just typed in my password. I can click remember me. It will log in. And now we will close the app. Can open up IanMAL. And it goes straight to the content screen. So you can have as many shows as you want. You can even turn this sideways as well. It works as a list too. And you can open up the content. And this is where I can show you how it scrolls, since it's saved inside of a list. These do not do anything right now. And there it is. There's my app.